Welcome in to Cover Crimson. My name is Emily Grace McWhorter, and I join Clint Lamb to talk all things Alabama football. Clint, we have some exciting behind the scenes today that we got introduced to. We are going to be reacting to the first episode of The Tides That Bind on Fox Nation. That's where you guys can check it out. And unfortunately, they will be coming out weekly, so you can't go binge it, but we did get to watch the first episode. And Clint, what are your initial reactions? What are your thoughts?
Ooh, that's a good question. A lot of different directions that we can take it.
Yeah.
Let's see. First of all, Kalen DeBoer is a very popular guy when he is willing to say anything that resembles a cuss word, like the word hell.
Yep.
Team went crazy when he did that. Hopefully we don't ruin too much for you, AK, even though I'm pretty sure you know how that Georgia game turned out, which is kind of like what the entire first episode was centered around. I love Jamarcus Shepard. Obviously, he played a massive part in it. Just, I don't know. I think getting to see kind of the behind the scenes and what all goes into it. Jalen Milroe being shown, as far as the preparing for that first game and watching film and what all goes into that. I think it was very revealing.
Yes, I agree. You mentioned Jamarcus Shepard. My biggest takeaways from it were you're going to like Jamarcus Shepard even more if you did not think that was possible, and you're also going to like Ryan Williams even more if you did not think that was possible. I thought that everything that they did with him and Jamarcus Shepard was so interesting, and I think that it was such a unique perspective to having the different interviews that they did have. I want to touch on, you mentioned Jalen Milroe, that preview of him preparing for a game. And the room that he was in, it was so interesting. He had a whiteboard to his left. He had all these monitors. He had the, yellow highlight little tablet that he's able to circle different defenses and things like that. And I thought that was really interesting to kind of pull back the curtain because I don't know about you, Clint, but I've never seen that actually taking place and having it, broken down by the quarterback in that setting before.
Wish I had access to some of that technology. That would be very nice. I mean, I'm your typical fan will say, "Hey, I just want access to the all 22. Give it to me however you can get it to me," because it's very beneficial. For anybody that doesn't know, the all 22 is like it gives you two different angles. It'll tell you down and distance and how much time is left in the the quarter and all that stuff, and then it'll show kind of a sideline view, and then it'll show an end zone view, and it's great for kind of getting a full picture of how things go down, but. Watching the players and stuff kind of go through that process, I don't think people realize like it is practice. But the reason that we've always talked about why some of these athletes should get paid is, I mean, you've got practice, you've got meetings that you have to be in where, film studies going on, a lot of different things are going on. You have to be in the weight room doing stuff. You got to be breaking down film on your own. Like it is a full-time job. And, just watching Jalen Milroe go through that process, actually, I kind of wondered how he would do as far as kind of on the whiteboard explaining plays to NFL evaluators through this pre-draft process. Seeing him go through that, now granted, that's him kind of probably being, something that he had seen before. He had kind of already looked at it, maybe talked about it with a coach. So maybe he had an idea. I'm not saying it's going to be necessarily like great at it, but what I was more so concerned about is if they just drop a random play on you, say, hey, draw this up, tell me this, tell me that, would he be able to do it? But I think watching him go through that process, I feel a little bit more confident in his ability to do that when it comes time, combine and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's a great point too, because there have been a lot of questions on it. And like I said, it was very brief. It was only about, I would say, 2 minutes really of seeing Milroe doing that. He also mentioned that he gets in there about 4:15. He never mentioned what time he left or when he leaves those film studies, but I'd imagine he spends hours on end breaking it down. I want to kind of go back to the beginning, and I don't know how much we'll spoil with this, guys, because you all saw how that game played out. I guess there's some more behind the scenes things that took place, but that opening scene of them coming out of the tunnel for the Georgia game, I don't know about you, Clint, but it made me wish football season was here.
Yeah. I'll go ahead and I got some notes here that I kind of took during it, and I'll be doing this. And first thing I wrote was DeBoer saying we're tough as hell, and the players going crazy. The second thing I wrote was sorry for the cussing. I'm just telling you how my badass entrance through the lens of a Bama player going through the tunnel. I thought that was just that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up too. Just very emotional, and just for any fan that would kind of wonder what that would be like. First of all, I'm right there with you. Birmingham Southern did not have that kind of energy and that kind of tunnel entrance. I'll go ahead and tell you that. But it's like the closest probably any of us are ever going to get to it. And it was really cool to see. You can see why everybody's. I imagine being an 18-year-old kid, 19, 20, running through that tunnel with all of that, in that environment, and try to tell me that there wouldn't be at least some sort of anxiety. Right. I think just experiencing that, I'm like, that was my next thought is, man, just the you can feel how big those moments are. It takes a special young man to be able to respond to that in a positive way.
And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, I get a great view of that entrance every Saturday, right? When I'm in Bryant-Denny, I'm on the field and we can only go as far as the end zone. And so I'm, crouching down, have my phone ready to get that entrance. And I've always been curious, what does it look like from the other side? What does it look like stepping into that Coliseum? And like, it is just the energy that I feel. And again, guys, I'm literally just filming it, but getting to see those players coming out, it was incredible. I think that really set the tone for this series. And I feel like we're going to see more of these docuseries start to come out. Alabama is not alone in having these. This isn't exclusive to them when I say, documenting an entire series. Notre Dame has one out right now as well. And I want to say there's another one that was being filmed. Is it at Ohio State potentially? There's two more.
Well, I know there's a bunch. I know Notre Dame had one.
Yeah.
Maybe Ohio State.
Maybe Ohio State.
Yeah, I just don't know who all they're for. But speaking of which, go ahead with what you were saying first.
Well, I was going to say Vandy also has one with the Netflix documentary. And with that, what was interesting is that Netflix was filming a multitude of these games. So I was actually at the Auburn Texas A&M game, and me and Taylor Korn, who works here at the Next Round, she's the director of social media, we were actually filmed and had to sign a waiver for, that to potentially be used. Auburn ended up backing out of that, but there was a lot of filming taking place this past season across multiple teams and not exclusive to Alabama.
100%. And what I will say is, James' comment, now I understand why the Tide went 9-4. We are used to national championship docuseries, slowly turned into Texas A&M with their docuseries record and all. James, what I'll say to that is this was a historic moment in college football. The greatest college football coach of all time after almost 2 decades of the most dominant run of all time, not even close, not even up for discussion. He retires from the game finally. And you had somebody else following in the footsteps of an absolute legend. And you really couldn't document that. Like when Bear Bryant decided to step down, you didn't have the ability to document that to this degree. You'll see a lot more of that as like legendary coaches step down, and really, how many are there? But I'm kind of surprised that you didn't see that when like Tom Brady left the Patriots. I'm surprised, which I guess Bill Belichick was still there and he would have nixed that right there. But when he, got fired, and maybe it was the fact that he got fired or got let go or whatever. I don't know. I think it's something that we shouldn't be shocked at all by the fact that this was a desirable thing for someone to document. And while it wasn't the results that everybody was kind of looking for, or at least Bama fans, it was still historical in a lot of ways to see that transition kind of happen in real time.
Well, that's a great point, Clint. I'm glad you brought that up because the opening frames of this docuseries is Top Gun style, where it has like the typing on the screen. And it's the focal point of this is really to highlight the transitionary period. It's to highlight Nick Saban retiring and everything that came forth after that. I'm curious if we're going to get an episode specifically on the retirement, on the coverage that happened. I don't know if that's set to be put in place. I hope it is, because I would love to see that through a different lens after living it and kind of getting to reflect on it in this way. But I will say that I'm taking this as, I don't think this is going to be a yearly thing for Alabama. I think it's simply, we wanted to document what it looked like to transition from the greatest coach of all time to Kalen DeBoer stepping in. And we got some of that commentary specifically with Game Day. Game Day was filmed. Obviously, they were in Tuscaloosa that day. So we got the interaction of Nick Saban and Kalen DeBoer and the commentary there. So I would imagine going forward, and I'm not sure how they're going to format this series, Clint. I don't know if you've seen anything, if it'll be game by game, or if we might have an episode, wholly devoted to Kalen DeBoer arriving in Tuscaloosa and things like that.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see exactly where they take it. Like,
yeah,
the fact that they started with the Georgia game, being in week 5, or it is week 5, but it was the 4th game. Now, granted, are you covering Western Kentucky and USF and, maybe Wisconsin, but that's kind of a road thing. I'm sure that's kind of tougher as far as access and just the magnitude of that Georgia game being in the regular season like it was, which has been the first time in quite a while in a full capacity stadium. I don't know. I think there's a lot of different directions they can take this. It was Ryan Williams is like the most, and Jalen Milroe probably. Those are the two most obvious. They're going to be a big part of this. You're going to see a lot of them, included some other people as well. But, from a player perspective, very polarizing, big name players. And I thought, Jalen Milroe, they showed a side of him that I think fans know exist, but just him with the parents and the emotion that was going into that, like you could tell it was very genuine with Ryan kind of being – a guy who's just getting to college and he's pulling out, a trading card with for his first ever touchdown and just kind of having a camera there to capture that moment. That's a moment that like he'll never forget, but from a fan's perspective, you got to experience that kind of with him, not in real time, but you'll forever remember what that moment was like too. Cause this guy, I mean, do you want to get into kind of some of the things that Jamarcus Shepard was saying about him?
Yes, I'd love to.
First of all, it was Jamarcus Shepard. I guess, do you have the quote in front of you or you want me to read it? I went and transcribed
it. You can read it. You got it, Clint.
And you know what? I'm going to give you the Jamarcus Shepard unfiltered version.
You have to.
So at one point it cuts to him and he says, I'm tired of sugarcoating shit for people in this room anymore. I'm not sugarcoating. It's a tall tale sign that our two receivers who have the most production in the room are the two who are taking notes right now. And then it cuts to the receivers and you see Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard taking notes. And immediately Kobe Prentice and some other guys start grabbing their notebooks out of their bag very slowly. But then he continues, it's a telltale sign that's how it is. I'm sick of this shit. The ball goes in the air. You've got to want it. Everybody wants to be cute. All these weak ass haircuts y'all got. Shit all pristine and shit. Ain't nobody got no dog in them. So, if you want to, the fact that Ron Williams was 17 years old, not 17 anymore, but he was at the time, and he was already showing that kind of leadership and everything. First of all, just thought that moment perfectly, it perfectly captured Jamarcus Shepard, but it also perfectly captured Ron Williams and kind of what some of the things that he does to be as great as he is.
Yes, and I want to also mention, and you guys will see this when you watch it, the clip before this was Jalen Mbakwe and Ryan Williams handing out the chains in the facility. And I thought that was an interesting juxtaposition because you have this excitement, the chains are talking about the new wave of college football and how Ryan Williams is saying, we're going to respect the process, we're going to respect the tradition, but it has to be different just because of the era that Alabama is in, but really the era that college football is in. But then it cuts to Jamarcus Shepard and these receivers and Jamarcus Shepard saying like, he's sick of that kind of mentality, if you will, of the haircuts and making sure you look good. And Ryan Williams, you can't fault him for the chains and extending that to his teammates because he's the one front row that is taking notes. And then, Clint, we can go into the stats that Jamarcus Shepard mentioned that really even further set Ryan Williams apart from those other guys in the room.
Yes. And so I'll be pulling up my Twitter because I did tweet out. So he said that Ryan Williams in a practice that they were recording, and they have all this GPS stuff that tracks like everything, way more information available to these coaches and the level of effort that guys are giving in every weightlifting session and every practice. But he mentions that Ryan Williams had had a top end speed of 21.9 miles per hour. And he also mentioned that there were only two other players on the team that had broken 20 miles per hour in that practice. So in practice, more than Ryan Williams is able to top out more than 20 miles an hour. I guarantee you there's more speed on that team than that would reflect. But what it does show to me was Ryan Williams was going way harder than everybody else. And as you're reacting to it, I'll be pulling up the comparisons to the NFL guys.
Yeah. So, Clint tweeted this out. It's a great statistic. But, it shows the effort that Ryan is putting in at practices. And a lot of people have questions about how they are able to track this. And so it's through Catapult. So it's those sports bras that you see these players wearing. And so everything is trackable. Also in Alabama's weight room, I did a great interview with Coach Blue, the strength and conditioning coach. everything is measured because they decided to invest in that before it was really popular to invest in that. So when you look at those weight room stations that are spread across the weight room, the players can actually see exactly in real time their body reacting to whatever workout they're doing, what they're hitting, PRs, things like that. And then after practice, right, all the coaches are given basically a stat sheet and they can see, like we saw Jamarcus Shepard saying, who is putting in the most effort. And it's not based on, what they think. It is statistics, measurables that they're able to use and also improve practice after practice. These are getting more popular, like across, even mid-majors starting to get this technology, but Alabama was definitely, at the forefront of that and making it a priority.
That is 100% true. I'll be 100% honest. Back when I played, you might have, 4 sets of 10 on bench press that you got to do. Sometimes you do 3 sets of 10 and 4 sets of 8. You might get there on that 8th and be like, you know what? I think I've worked pretty hard on this one. There's no such thing as doing anything like that nowadays. And there's actually, I've actually had this discussion with a former teammate of mine that I won a state championship with in 2006, who played defensive line and then offensive line at Alabama in Alfred McCullough. And we've joked about it. I mean, he was kind of one of those types of players too, where every once in a while he might take a play off or do something. And it's like, Nick Saban was about as good at kind of tracking that as you could be without all this technology.
Yeah.
They knew when guys were loafing, they had a good feel and everything else. So he has talked to me about the adjustment period and just having somebody constantly on you. You're not able to get away with really anything, but just having that information available, it's a perfect representation of the person that Ryan Williams is. And you can see that on tape when you see the guy in practice, like we're going, and granted, I'm not saying he's going 100 miles an hour when he's doing the warm-up routes and all that stuff, but you can tell when he is on a practice field, when he is in the weight room, when he is on a game field, he is about his business. And that's why I think, whatever he wants to do, the podcast and stuff, I will say not everyone can do that. Not everyone can balance it. If you're spending too much time worrying about the things like that or doing that too much, you won't have the ability to still be an impactful player to the degree that Ryan Williams is on Saturdays. I don't want to hear anything about him being a freshman and how things kind of started to fall off towards the end of the year and all that stuff. And that might be a correlation. That I guarantee you, that is just your typical freshman going through that process. I think that was more so struggles within the entire offense. Now, Ron was a part of that. He had some drops. That's always been kind of, he's a special talent, but you will get some drops every once in a while. But 21.9 miles per hour, when you look at the NFL players last year, and I think I got it tracked through week 11, but Kevontae Turpin, who was a kick returner for the Dallas Cowboys, he topped out at 22.36 miles per hour. That was the highest in the NFL through week 11 last year. Didn't go and find the rest. There might be somebody higher. But like Brian Thomas Jr., 22.15. Jahmyr Gibbs, former Alabama running back, 22.03. Saquon Barkley, 21.93. Nico Collins, 21.89. You start, and this is exactly where Ron was in this range. And then I think DK Metcalf the year before was 22.36 as well. When you go and you look at the 40 times for some of these guys, like Turpin he ran a 4.3 140. You look at Brian Thomas, 4.33. You look at Jahmyr Gibbs, 4.36. Saquon Barkley ran a 4.4 flat. DK Metcalf, another one of those guys who was up in this range, 4.33. So what this tells me is at 17 years old, which is where he was at, he was running at I would say his 40 time bare minimum at 17 years old was a 4.4. And he's probably only going to get faster from here. So he's going to be a 4.3 guy, not a doubt in my mind when the combine rolls around, assuming he stays healthy and all the rest of that.
Absolutely. And again, this was just such an interesting look behind the curtain that we got to see. There was also some really heartwarming moments as well, Clint. And I don't want to spoil those because I know those will be out on social media, but I feel like we're going to get a lot more of that too. Coach DeBoer brought over some of the traditions from Washington, and that includes meeting with kids and families with the team every week. And we got a behind the scenes look at that. So it had me hooked the whole 47 minutes. And that, in this day and age, obviously, since I covered this team, I'm naturally inclined to want to sit down and do that. But I feel like there was no wasted minutes of this docuseries. and we're only to episode 1. So I'm excited to see it progress to the next 5 episodes. And I think, Clint, we can kind of make this a weekly thing where we get on here and we start reacting to what we're seeing as the episodes come out.
Yeah, because it's like we were just talking about with Ryan Williams. Just exposes the kind of player he is. Some of the things that they will be revealing later on, it will tell you about some of these coaches. It'll tell you about this team. I was reminded about how Kalen DeBoer handled when he had to go on the game day set with Nick Saban. It's like this massive game days there. Nick Saban was cool as a cucumber. Anytime this type of game popped up and he had to go spend time with the media. But imagine even someone like Nick Saban, if he had to go sit with a Nick Saban caliber guy who had just left where he was at and he had to kind of share a stage with him and everything, you can get swallowed up real quick. I really don't care who you are. And I just remember seeing that. I was reminded he handled that extremely well. I thought he was personable. He sounded a little bit nervous at times, just speaking candidly. Can't blame him for that, to be honest with you. But, I thought overall he handled it extremely well. And so I think that following in the footsteps of Nick Saban, tracking that like they are, and us getting to see that transition happen, because we saw it as it all happened. But as far as pulling the curtain back, I think it's pretty revealing and pretty cool.
Yeah, there was one shot too that you can see my little blue phone in the corner on one of Jalen's touchdowns. So I'm excited too, just to kind of relive these moments as they come. I'm curious to how they'll, measure this and what the following episodes will be. We know it'll be 6 episodes. So we got so much information in this first episode that it's just exciting to think about what else we're going to find out. And I love the highlight of Ryan Williams, and I feel like there was all these conversations surrounding him throughout this season because he's only 17 years old and he has these incredible moments in games. Like you mentioned earlier, Clint, kind of tapered off there towards the end, but having this positive reinforcement of the hard work that he puts in is only a good thing, in my opinion, as he enters season 2 with Alabama.
Yeah. Another thing that I had forgotten about is they said that in a practice he had run over 8,000 yards.
Yeah.
And the next highest was Kendrick Law at 6,900.
6,000, yeah.
So he had run almost 1,100 yards more than the next highest, at least receiver. That might have not been for everybody, but the guy gets after it, man. And I think that's really cool. We got a question from Randy. Any relation to old Bear? Because we talked about this. We talked about this yesterday.
We have. I am not related to Bear McWhorter. Unfortunately, I feel like, I've definitely got a soft spot because we share a last name. He is from Georgia as well. And what's funny is that his dad used to put his stats on billboards across the state of Georgia to highlight him. And at the time, he was being heavily recruited by Arkansas. And so there was a lot of Arkansas Bear McWhorter billboards that were literally along like I-20 and I-75. So I'm not related to Bear. We would actually, we'd love to have him on. Maybe we can reach out to him. I quote tweeted one of his tweets that he sent out when he was visiting Alabama with Coach DeBoer. I said, great last name. So hopefully we can kind of get him in the mix here because although we're not related, I do have a soft spot for him and would love to see him, with a team that I'm covering.
Yeah. I think by this point, everybody knows I got kind of a player crush on him just because I think Alabama needs as many of those kind of dudes as they can get. And he does have a pretty good last name. It's not as good as Lamb, but I would say that's McWhorter's a pretty strong last name.
It is a strong last name. Not very common either. There was a Mason McWhorter at Georgia Southern who played baseball. And we joke now that I think that I kind of got some of my jobs because they thought I was his sister, not his sister. But again, I will always take a fellow McWhorter in the mix, especially when it comes to teams that I'm covering. So again, hopefully we'll have an update and maybe we can get Bear on the show here in a couple of weeks.
Definitely. And Jim, we're thinking it's going to be March 3rd. Is that kind of where you're at?
Yeah. So March 3rd, things are really going to start to pick up here in the next couple of weeks. We'll have Pro Day. The month of March will be pretty stacked with in-person coverage that me and Clint will provide. So come, first week of March, I'll start heading back down to Tuscaloosa. Clint, I know you're going to join me for Pro Day, and we're going to make sure that you guys have the best coverage possible. We're not sure on what it'll look like in terms of practice viewing windows. We're holding out hope, and we're kind of assuming right now. And I always say it's never a good thing to assume anything when it comes to Alabama football. So I probably shouldn't say that, but I'll say we're hoping that we'll get that practice viewing window for you guys. But things are picking up here real soon, and we kind of went through this drought of no football, and now we're kind of getting back in the swing of things. And before you know it, the spring game will be here. But like I said, we will have in-person coverage here very, very soon.
Yeah, and then for podcast purposes, I'm still getting used to it being both. Jim asked, when does spring practice actually start? I just jumped in. Somebody listening and can't see. They're going to be like, what? I mean, what's talking about March 3rd? And we'll finish up real quick with Greg Skitworth asking, which of the quarterbacks on the roster aligns with what Grubb and DeBoer want to do offensively? Just, I'll give you a chance real quick. Just share your thoughts on the quarterbacks and kind of where it stands pre-spring practice, and then I'll jump in.
Yeah, this is a question that a lot of people are asking because Ryan Grubb and Kalen DeBoer, I'm actually doing kind of a deep dive on Ryan Grubb right now. And one thing and this may not be a shock to some people, but it may be some helpful information. Ryan Grubb has spent more of his coaching career with Kalen DeBoer than without him. So pretty crazy stat right there. And I think that when you look at what kind of offense that Ryan Grubb likes, one thing that has stuck out to me, again, this is this morning when I'm doing some of this research, is he really likes an established run game to balance out the, air attack. And so right now, I personally have not seen enough. Obviously, Keelan Russell is someone that is a question mark for a lot of reasons because we haven't seen him at the collegiate level. And Ty Simpson is a guy that has been there, stuck around. But then you have Austin Mack, who has that existing relationship with Ryan Grubb. So I don't want to commit to one that fits the system better. I think what they're looking for is a balanced attack with an emphasis on an established run game. I think that's going to be key for Grubb and DeBoer as they kind of figure things out going forward.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. I think processing is big.
Mm-hmm.
I think playing within structure is big. Not saying that they don't want you being able to go off script and make plays and do all that, but it's not built for like a game manager. I'm not going to go that far, but like when you look at Michael Penix, he was very good. He thrived in structure and just if everything's operating the way that it should, the play is designed in a way where guys are able to get open, whether it be through talent or through the actual call. You got an offensive line that can kind of keep you protected when everything's going the way it should and everything's clicking. You need to have somebody that can process information. I think that's really important. I think Ty Simpson is very good at that. I think Keelan Russell is very good at that. And from what I've seen, which is limited compared to the others, I think Austin Mack is good at that too. And one thing I'll say about Austin Mack is the coaching staff has seen him every day in practice for multiple years now. So if he wasn't a good processor and he wasn't a great fit for the offense, then they wouldn't have brought him over. So I would just assume he's right there with those other guys. So that's something that I think, maybe as good as Jalen Milroe was and the kind of plays that he made for the offense, I think that's something that was lacking a little bit at times. I would expect that to be a lot different. And I think that's going to make a world of difference in how things are called and how things go on Saturdays from a consistency standpoint. And it's gonna, you need to have that run game that can kind of balance that and keep things on schedule and do all that. So I wouldn't say there's any quarterback on the roster that better fits what Kalen DeBoer is looking for compared to the others. But what I will say is Keelan Russell, from a playmaking ability and having all the other stuff too, including the legs. Ty Simpson's mobile, I think Max mobile as well. Mm-hmm. But Keelan, just from the off script, he's his legs and the dynamic aspect of his legs, I think, will add a little bit more juice maybe compared to the other guys, but he's still young. So where is he at on some of this stuff compared to where Ty Simpson and Austin Mack are? That'll be something I'll be keeping an eye on. EG, do you have anything else before we hop out of here?
No, I'm just excited for this docuseries. I think this is something to be excited for because I think that we're going to continue to get these behind the scene looks and we're going to get a different perspective on something that we all went through, whether you're like me and Clint who covered it or, as a fan, you got to see the transition and we all have our own thoughts and opinions on how that went. But I think this is a good thing and I'm excited for next week to get that next episode. I do wish it was bingeable, I think, but I also kind of like the anticipation of having to wait a little bit. We don't really get that often anymore.
Yeah, we don't. That's exactly how everything's set up now. They just give you everything. Yeah. And I've never seen the OC. My wife has seen it. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's an old TV show, and you're
bits and pieces. Yes, one of my roommates used to watch it.
So it's like kind of it's one of those shows where I can work and kind of watch, and if I miss something, I'm not like devastated. But watching that, I notice I'm like every episode seems to be left on a cliffhanger. And I don't think you get that as much nowadays because the way shows are designed, it's like not waiting until next week. It's just,
Right.
hey, we can do this. Nothing has to happen at the end of this episode because they're just clicking next anyways.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I thought that was pretty interesting. And going about it this way, next week, there will be a lot more anticipation. I really didn't know that this even was coming out. And maybe, did you?
Okay, no. During the season, there was a press conference. I think it was right before the Iron Bowl. And I was down there, and there was a camera in the corner filming the media, asking DeBoer questions. And I remember thinking, like, that's kind of weird. Because I was like, I don't know why this would be filmed, because it panned DeBoer, panned to us sitting down. And so I kind of had a thought, like, they might be doing something. But I feel like it kind of came out of nowhere in a lot of ways. And so I think that people were kind of like, it hasn't gotten word of mouth traction yet. But I think after this first episode, like you mentioned, next week people are going to be really anticipating it, especially as clips start circulating on social media. That's a huge part of all of this. They had a great preview that went out yesterday. That got me pretty excited for it. But yeah, like you, Clint, I wasn't aware that they were filming throughout the entire season.
Yeah, and I had a real hard time. It's on Fox Nation for anybody that doesn't know. And I'd like tried to get it through YouTube TV. I like went and clicked on that box to add it to my package. Like I don't have 100 other things added on there too, but I'm like, whatever. And then, it still wouldn't let me access it on the app on my TV. And then I'd like go through and sign. So it was I was not a happy camper for like 20 minutes with my TV, but yeah, go ahead.
Keep that in mind when you guys are trying to access it. You might have to have a subscription to Fox Nation. It's $4.99 a month, and you have access. You can access that. I watched on my laptop. You can watch on your TV as well. But I think the easiest, most streamlined way is foxnation.com. If you have, your TV provider, put that information in, see if it works that way. But you may have to do, the free trial subscription service to watch the next 5 episodes, excuse me.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll pay, $4.99 or whatever it is, $5 for, because I mean, that'll give you a month, I guess, right? And it's 6 episodes, and that was 1. So you might have to spend $10, but I'll easily spend $10 on what we just got, especially 6 of those. So, all right, well, this has been fun. Appreciate everybody hopping in. The comments have been great. And EG, you got anything else?
No, just join us on covercrimson.com. We'd love to have you over there. You can get $25 off your annual subscription. We have a lot of great content going out that is very in-depth. If you want to get to know this roster, I mean, I would argue that Cover Crimson is the only place that is doing it to the extent that we are doing it, because I think that we have some awesome in-depth analysis, specifically Clint, that goes through every single player on this roster. So again, if you want to have a handle on this when you're watching games, when you're keeping up with spring, there's no better place to go than covercrimson.com. We've got some message board chatter going. We talk about, basically anything and everything. We'd love to have you over there. So covercrimson.com, sign up today, and also follow us on social media. You can follow me at MEG_sports. Clint, you're what, at Clint Lamb?
Clint R. Lamb.
Clint R. Lamb, Clint R. Lamb, and then Cover Crimson. And that's on X, Instagram, you name it, we're there. But we love doing these with you. We will be back Friday at noon. We have another programming change. We'll be going live Wednesdays and Fridays immediately following the next round. So you can get all of your, morning started there, and then join us at noon here on Cover Crimson.